It's Nonstop Nut November.
Try to relax your anus.
And we're back with another random news of gaming, where I jizz out my opinions on random gaming news stories from the past month, then end the video by slapping some sweet new releases right onto your face. Let's bust right into it.
I'm about to bust.
And speaking of bust, Overwatch 2. What a disaster that game is. The first story that came out close to launch was that it required a phone number just to play the game, which a lot of people didn't really like. And the first Overwatch officially became a dead game, even though people bought it, and now they can't play it anymore, unless they just go over to Overwatch 2. Then when the game actually came out, there were tons of server issues, and people were pretty much unable to play because of disconnections and stuff like that. Then there was the glitch where the game would automatically buy skins from the shop for you. Watching this shit go down was just hilarious because I don't care about Overwatch. Blizzard sucks now. It's kind of cathartic to see them crash and burn at this point. And let's be honest, the only reason people still care about Overwatch is because of the porn. Just saying.
Try to relax your anus.
And it looks like Call of Duty is next on the list to have all these issues. Or so I thought, because it came out recently and people really like it. They did the whole phone requirement thing for Modern Warfare 2, but it was only for the PC version, which is really stupid, but people are still buying it, so you get the industry you deserve. Just saying. Early in October, we saw the first trailer for the Mario movie, and I don't care. I've honestly never really wanted a Mario movie or a Zelda movie or anything like that, so after seeing this trailer, that hasn't really changed. We'll see how good it actually is when it comes out, though. Oh yeah, and Sonic Prime was officially revealed, so there's that too. Lately, Square Enix has really been trying to milk the Final Fantasy VII name. And one of the ways they did that was making a mobile battle royale game called Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. But nobody cared, apparently, because they announced it'll be ending less than a year in. Like, this was so blatantly obviously a cash grab that even the most normie fans of Final Fantasy VII probably realized that, so nobody ever played this thing. And I hope it'll serve as an example for other developers that try to do the same thing. But we'll see. Next, we have the story I'm sure everybody already heard about. Last month, Bayonetta 3's original voice actor Helena Taylor asked people to boycott the game because she was offered an amount of money that she didn't like, which turned into a very viral story that everyone was obsessed with for a long time last month. I got tired of hearing about it very early on, and I knew there was more to this story that wasn't being shown to us at the time. And I'd like to sit here and say I told you so, but I never really commented about it last month publicly. But I knew not to get up in arms over this because it turns out she was lying. This is why you have to wait. Don't take people at their word. Wait for proof. Wait for evidence. Especially in places like Twitter, which is not the place you go to resolve problems like this. But if people haven't learned by now, they probably never will. The funny thing about her asking us to boycott the game was that it actually increased the sales of Bayonetta 3. And I actually started playing it myself, as you're seeing in the footage here of me getting my ass kicked, but the game's pretty good so far as I can tell. And honestly, if I had never heard that the voice actors were switched, I probably wouldn't have even been able to tell. I don't think voice actors deserve the celebrity status they're given on the internet these days. And especially after playing games like Breath of the Wild, I would always make the semi-sarcastic remark that video game voice acting was a mistake, but that's just me. The next story isn't really a news story, but apparently there were a bunch of salty game developers on Twitter complaining that the Xbox Series S was holding back game development because of its low specs. And it caused a sort of console peasant war on Twitter, which was hilarious to look at. But anyone who knows anything about how games work will tell you that these devs were not telling the truth. In order to get games to run on lower spec systems, one of the things you can do is just lower the graphics settings, which is something we do on PC games all the time. But hey, at least it caused a funny console war on Twitter, so I guess it was worth it anyway. There's an upcoming horror game called the Callisto Protocol that everyone seems to be really hyped about, and it looks really brutal. So much so that the Japanese ratings boards at Zero rejected the game completely. Instead of choosing to alter the content and censor it down to their standards, the developers decided to just not release the game in Japan at all, which, in my opinion, is the absolute correct thing to do. If the people in Japan want to play the game, all they have to do is import a different copy from another region. So they can still play the game in the way it was intended to be played. And I think this was a bigger story than most censorship news because the Callisto Protocol is a Western game, and this normally doesn't happen to Western games. Usually it's Japanese developers that have to censor their games when they're releasing in Western markets, or releasing on modern-day PlayStation and Xbox, or releasing on Steam, which we'll get into next. But some of these Japanese developers have been doing this for a long time. They'll release a version in Asia and Japan with English options and then let us import it that way. And I wish all Japanese developers would do this, but we can't always have nice things, I guess. And that leads into the next topic. Chaos Head Noah, a visual novel, was banned on Steam, and for seemingly no reason, because no reason was ever given. Steam's had a history of banning games in Japan, usually that have high school aged characters or something like that. Their standards aren't really clear, which is what's the most frustrating thing about this, but eventually, people complained enough to get it unbanned on Steam, and I think part of the reason why they decided to unban it was because it made them look stupid, because there were physical versions of this game releasing on Switch and even on PlayStation. So yeah, Steam needs to get their crap together when it comes to this stuff, and the developers of Chaos Head Noah decided to release the game on GOG as well. So if you want to get the game and don't want to give Steam money for it because of their stupid behavior, then you can buy it there instead. And lastly, we have The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie finally coming out in 2023. And please, for the love of God, Nisa, don't screw this one up. We've been waiting a long time for it. Just make it good. Don't change anything. Don't do any of your stupid little edits. All I want is to be able to experience this story without having to worry about anything that's may or may not be different from what it was originally intended to be. That's really all I want. It's not that hard to do, so look forward to that finally coming next year. 4 years after it came out in Japan. Yay.
Your shoulders.
Alright, and rounding out the video, let's look at some releases. For A Vast Future is a Game Boy Color inspired RPG that came out on November 1st. And it's set in a futuristic dystopian world where there's a lot of exploration and crafting involved, and the gameplay looks like it's inspired by various classic JRPGs. Next we have Ghost Song, an atmospheric Metroidvania set on a desolate moon with some really beautiful artwork to go along with it. Next we have Harvestella, a Square Enix game that I normally would put on the list, but after playing the extremely disappointing Rune Factory 5, this game looks like it could have been what Rune Factory 5 should have been. I haven't really tried it yet, so the jury's still out on this one, and there's some weird design choices in this one that don't really vibe with me. One example being the blatantly Squeenix art style that I'm honestly not too much of a fan of, but we'll see how it plays out. And next, we have a game that's coming out tomorrow, Sonic Frontiers. And yes, this is another game you probably don't need me to remind you about, but the reason why I'm including it here is because I'm really interested in seeing how it plays out. Even though I'm not really excited for it in any way whatsoever, but Sonic and I go back a long ways, so I really hope that this can be a return to glory for the Blue Hedgehog. We'll see tomorrow, I guess. Next, we have a game called Terracotta, which is a top-down action-adventure puzzle game inspired by ancient China, and I included this because it looks like something that would interest fans of 2D Zelda games, as it looks somewhat inspired by that, but it also looks like it could be something completely different. And if you like those games and want something that might be a little different, you should check this one out maybe. Next, we have a game called This Way Madness Lies, which is a JRPG inspired by Shakespeare with magical girl characters. Sounds like a match made in hell, but it looks like it has some potential, so we'll see. And the last game I have on the list is a JRPG called Monochrome Mobius, which appears to be a prequel to the Utawa Werumono series. I hope I said that right. So if you're ever a fan of those, you should probably check this one out. If not, I honestly don't know if you should play the others first or not, but if it's a prequel, maybe not. And that's it for this video. If you have a news story you want me to cover in next month's video, feel free to drop it in the comments. If not, go away.